The starship moved slowly through the dark space, and its silver body reflected the light of a dying sun. Inside the training hall, thousands of alien cadets waited for the final announcement. It was the most feared test in the Galactic Academy, a test called Shelter Food Safety. Survive alone on a strange planet for 10 days without help or contact. Only your mind, your hands, and your courage could save you. Most cadets looked afraid. Some whispered in their own languages, their skin colors, shifting in nervous patterns while the instructors in long silver coats moved across the stage. Reading the list of names when the human name came, everyone went silent. His name was Eli Carter. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and calm. His eyes were bright blue like frozen water. His uniform was simple, no extra marks, no medals, just a human flag patch on his arm. Most of the other species had already judged him. They had heard stories about humans, small population from a dangerous planet full of storms and beasts. One alien whispered to another, "He is from the death world, they say, even their flowers bite." But the laughter soon followed. They thought he was only rumor, a creature of chaos and accident, not control. Eli stood straight as the commander of the academy spoke. "Each cadet will be sent to a different place. Your goal is to find shelter, find food, and survive. No weapons, no help. If you fail, you are out of the academy. If you die, your score is recorded as 0. The hall echoed, with the sound of metal tails twitching, wings folding, and claws scraping the floor. Eli felt every stare on him, but he only smiled quietly and said, "Understood, sir." When the transport pods lined up across the deck, Eli walked toward his small silver capsule. His heart was steady, but his mind was full of questions. He looked at the distant star shining behind the observation glass and whispered softly to himself, "They think survival is about fighting. Maybe they never learned to live first." He stepped inside the pod, the door sealed with a hiss, and the robotic voice said, "Destination Delta. Prime terrain, forest, life forms unknown, temperature. Moderate estimated danger, level 8. Eli just nodded as the pod detached from the mothership and started falling through the clouds. The planet below looked like a sea of green and gold, huge trees with glowing roots, mountains shaped like teeth. The pod shook violently. Smoke filled the cabin, and a hard crash threw Eli against the wall. He coughed and pushed the door open. The air was heavy and full of strange sounds, birds, insects, and something deep that growled far away. He climbed out, grabbed his small survival pack, and took a deep breath. The air burned slightly but smelled of earth and rain. He looked around and said, "All right, New World, let's start." He remembered the 3 rules his father once told him back on Earth: shelter first, food, later safety. Always the order, never changes. He started to search for a good place to stay. He found a ridge with a small cave opening, half hidden by thick vines. It looked safe. For now, he cleared the entrance with a broken branch and started collecting dry leaves and sticks. He worked fast because the sky was already turning. Darker 2 moons rose together, spreading pale light across the forest when he lit his first small fire. He sat beside it, listening to the strange noises of the night. Then he saw them glowing eyes in the dark, dozens of them moving slowly through the trees. The sound of heavy steps and low growls echoed around the fire. Eli froze. His hand went to his belt, but there was no weapon, only a knife made from his broken pod metal. He stayed calm. He looked at the biggest pair of eyes and spoke in a low, steady voice, "I know you are there. I'm not food, not threat." He took a stick from the fire and held it up. The flames made the creatures hesitate. Then one stepped forward. It looked like a mix of wolf and reptile, dark fur with scales along its back, a long crystal horn on its head. The creature stopped at the edge of the firelight, growled once, and lowered its head. Eli didn't move. He slowly dropped the burning stick on the ground and pushed a small piece of cooked root toward it. The creature sniffed the air but did not attack behind it. More eyes flickered closer. Eli felt his pulse quicken, but he forced a smile. He knew animals could smell fear. The largest creature made a low sound like thunder. It stepped closer, sniffed the ground near the food, then looked straight at him. Eli whispered, "That's right, not enemy." The creature suddenly turned and walked back into the trees. The rest followed, leaving the fire alone. Eli exhaled slowly and laughed quietly, his voice shaking a little. "First night, not eaten, good start." He leaned back against the cave wall and stared at the fire, watching the shadows dance like living things. High above the planet in the observation room, the alien instructors watched his progress. On the screens, one of them said he didn't build weapons, he built shelter. Another replied he made fire and stayed calm. This species is strange. The commander frowned and said, "Record everything. This human is not normal." Back on the ground, Eli looked. At the stars through the cave opening, he felt small but alive. He whispered, "I don't need to fight the world, I just need to work with it." The wind answered him with a long howl, almost like words in another tongue the night creatures returned to. Their dens in the forest grew quiet. As he closed his eyes, the sensors on the Academy ship picked up movement, hundreds of predator signals moving around his location. The commander said quietly, "The test just changed level. 8 to level 10. Send." Warning to his monitor, but Eli's monitor was broken from the crash. He slept unaware that the next dawn would bring something no other cadet had ever seen: the forest itself, watching and waiting to meet the human who refused to fear it. The sun of Delta Prime rose fast and strong, painting the sky in gold and violet. Eli woke up with light falling across his face and the smell of wet leaves around him. The small fire had died, but the smoke still rose like a thin gray snake. He stretched his arms and looked outside the cave. The forest was awake everywhere. Strange creatures moved through the mist. Some climbed trees with 6 legs. Others had wings that glowed like paper lanterns. He smiled softly and said, "Morning, world." He started his plan like he always did back home on Earth. Think, observe, build. He walked down to the small stream he found the night before. The water was clear, but smelled slightly of metal. He touched it with one finger and waited when his skin didn't burn. He took a small sip. It was safe enough to drink. He filled his bottle, then looked for food. He followed the stream and found roots and small fruits growing near the rocks. He tasted one, bitter, but not deadly. He collected a few more. While he worked, he felt eyes watching him. He looked up and saw one of the same wolf-like creatures from last night standing on a hill. It was the one with the crystal horn. Eli called softly, "Hey, Shard." "Yeah, you look like a shard." The creature tilted its head, then walked away. Eli kept gathering food, but every few minutes he saw movement shadows between trees, glowing eyes following quietly. He didn't run. He knew running made animals hunt faster. Instead, he hummed a small tune from Earth, something calm and steady. The sound made the forest quiet for a while. He returned to his camp and began improving it. He used thick branches to build a frame around the cave, mouth tied with vines and covered with leaves for a roof. It was small but strong. He built a place for the fire inside and laid out stones in a circle outside to keep unwanted visitors away. When it was done, he sat on the ground and began carving his broken metal piece into a better knife. The handle wrapped in plant fiber. He muttered, small talk to himself. Old Earth habit kept the fear away. In the distance, the Academy drones floated like metal insects, filming every move. The alien instructors were confused. They had never seen any cadet work so quietly. Most panicked or cried. In the first day, one alien said he treats the planet like a friend, not an enemy. The commander only nodded and said, "Continue observation." By the second evening, the forest changed. Sound grew sharper, smell thicker. Eli knew something was coming. He quickly built 2 torches from tree resin and dry cloth. He lit them and stood near the fire. The shadows moved closer again, but this time the eyes did not stop. They came forward, slow and silent. He counted 6, maybe 7 of the creatures. Shard was among them, leading the pack. Eli's hand tightened on the torch. Shard growled, but it didn't sound like threat, more like question. Eli raised the torch and threw it in the air, letting sparks fly. The creatures jumped back, then watched the sparks fade. Eli said softly, "I know fire scares you, but it keeps us safe." He took a piece of meat from his pack, the last ration from his pod, and placed it on the ground between them. The smell spread quickly. Shard sniffed and stepped forward, picked the meat and moved back, slowly chewing without taking eyes off him. Eli smiled and whispered progress. The rest of the night passed with the creatures sitting a short distance away, their glowing eyes blinking in rhythm like they were thinking together. Eli kept feeding small scraps from his pack until the fire turned to embers. He looked at them and said, I'll have to find real food soon. Guess we're all hunting tomorrow. He laughed quietly, the sound soft and tired, far above the planet the observers couldn't understand what they were seeing. The commander asked the AI, "Are those predators showing aggression?" The AI replied negative. "They are showing group observation patterns, possibly communication." The commander frowned. Impossible. The next morning, Eli woke to a strange noise outside the cave. Soft steps, not running or sneaking, just walking when he looked out. Shard stood near the fire pit, carrying something in its mouth. It dropped it near him, a large fruit, bright red with thick skin. Eli blinked and said, "Are you giving me food?" Shard tilted its head again and snorted. Eli picked the fruit, cut it open with his knife, and took a cautious bite. "Sweet, safe." He laughed. "You brought breakfast." More creatures appeared behind Shard, each carrying something: roots, branches, pieces of dry wood. Eli's heart raced, not from fear but amazement. He said, "You want to help build, huh? All right, let's do this." He spent the rest of the day working with them, arranging wood, placing stones, marking paths. The creatures followed him, copying his moves, using jaws and claws to carry heavy things together. They built a stronger wall around the camp and a lookout point made from rock and vine. By sunset, the small area looked like a tiny village glowing. With firelight, Shard sat near the entrance watching the forest. Eli sat beside it, tired but smiling. He said, "You know, Shard, they think this is just a test, but maybe it's something bigger. Maybe survival means more than breathing. Maybe it means making friends in places that shouldn't have any." The creature huffed quietly and leaned closer, like it understood. Back on the observation deck, the commander stared at the monitor and said, "Record this: the human has done something no one else has. He didn't just survive. He started to build." The others in the room watched in silence, unable to decide if what they were seeing was genius or madness. Eli looked at the two moons rising again over the forest, the air warm and alive around him. He whispered, "This planet isn't wild. It's waiting for someone to listen," and for the first time since he landed, he didn't feel alone. He looked at Shard and smiled. "Tomorrow, we build more friend. Tomorrow we grow." The third dawn came with quiet air and silver mist. Eli woke before the sun fully rose. He stretched his back and looked at the camp. It no longer looked like a crash site. It looked like the start of something alive. The wall of branches stood firm. The fire pit glowed faintly, and beside it, Shard slept curled like a mountain of dark fur. Eli smiled softly, saying, "Guess you decided to stay, friend." He reached for his small knife and began sharpening it on a stone, slow, even strokes, each scrape echoing through the early light. When Shard woke, it shook its body, sending dewdrops flying. It looked at Eli with those bright crystal eyes, unblinking. Calm, Eli spoke gently. "Good morning, you hungry?" He took a handful of fruits and placed them on the ground. Shard sniffed but didn't eat. Instead, it walked to the edge of the camp, disappeared into the trees. Eli waited and wondered. Then, after a short while, the beast returned, dragging something heavy, a strange deer-like creature with glowing stripes. Eli blinked, impressed. "Well, you hunted breakfast for both of us." He built the fire again, sliced the meat carefully, and cooked it over steady flames. The smell filled the clearing. Other glowing eyes appeared between trees, watching. Eli tossed small pieces near them. Some took the food and vanished. Others stayed longer, curious but cautious. He didn't chase them away. He just talked softly as he worked. "You all think I'm strange, don't you? Maybe I am. Maybe humans are weird because we want to fix things, not just fight." Them far above the planet in the observation room, the instructors watched silently. One alien said he feeds them and they obey. Another replied, "No, they choose to stay. This is not training. This is communication." The commander leaned closer and said, "Record every behavior pattern. This could rewrite survival theory." Eli spent the day building higher walls using stronger branches and thicker vines. He used flat stones to make a path between the shelters and the water stream. Shard followed, carrying logs in its jaws, placing them where Eli pointed. Soon the structure started to look like a circle of safety, a small fort for man and beast. When he stood back to look at it, he felt a strange pride, not in himself, but in what they built together. Later, that afternoon, a sudden tremor shook the ground. Birds flew away in clouds and the forest went silent. Eli froze. He looked at Shard, who raised its head and growled deep and long. Something big was coming. Eli grabbed his metal blade and stepped beside, his beast partner together. They waited between the trees. A dark shadow moved slowly. Branches snapped. Then something crashed through the clearing, a creature twice the size of Shard, its skin like stone and eyes like fire. It roared, shaking the air. Eli's instincts screamed run, but his feet didn't move. Shard charged forward, biting at the giant beast's leg. The fight was chaos, sound, fury, and dust. Eli shouted, grabbed his burning torch, and ran into the fight. He struck the fire against the stone skin again and again until sparks caught the creature's face. The giant roared and stumbled back, disappearing into the trees wounded. Eli stood breathing hard, his arms shaking, covered in dust and sweat. Shard limped toward him, bleeding from one side. Eli dropped to his knees and pressed his hand to the wound, whispering, "You did good, hold on." He tore a strip from his shirt, wrapped the wound tight. Shard made a low rumble, but didn't pull away. It watched Eli with tired eyes. Eli said quietly, "You saved me." I won't forget that he sat beside the beast all night, feeding the fire, keeping predators away above him. The stars looked endless, cold and bright, but somehow not lonely. At sunrise, Shard stood again, slower but strong. Eli smiled. "You're tougher than I thought." He walked around the camp, fixing what was broken, then noticed more creatures arriving from the forest. They moved slowly, ears back, tails low like waiting for permission. Shard made a low sound, not a growl, but something between warning and welcome. Eli watched, amazed. The creatures came closer. One by one, they settled near the camp in circles like guards, like family high. In orbit, the commander spoke to the council. "He has turned predators into allies." One voice answered, "That's impossible." The commander said, "We're seeing it live. No aggression, no dominance, only cooperation." Down below, Eli sat beside Shard, carving a piece of wood into shape, his hand steady. He said softly, "Maybe this is what humans do. We build families." Even in the wild, he looked at the other creatures lying around the camp, some sleeping, some watching him. Their eyes calm, no longer glowing with hunger. That night, he built more fires across the perimeter, marking the area with warmth and light. The creatures stayed near, guarding each one as if it was sacred. Eli sat in the center, his face lit by flames. He whispered to himself, "They wanted a test of survival, but maybe survival isn't about who lives alone. Maybe it's about who learns to live together." The forest wind answered, carrying sparks into the dark sky. The drones above recorded every flicker, every motion. The instructors didn't speak. They only watched in disbelief while the human below smiled at the stars and scratched the head of the predator that had become his friend. The data feed glitched slightly from heat distortion. But one thing was clear. The forest had gone quiet. Not in fear, but in peace around the human's fire. Eli whispered softly as the night deepened, "Tomorrow we build more. Tomorrow we teach them to hunt and share, maybe even plant something." He looked at Shard resting beside him and added, "You and me, friend. We'll make this place more than a camp. We'll make it a home." The morning came calm, but heavy, the air thick with mist and the scent of rain. Eli stood at the edge of his growing village. The small shelters made of wood and stone now formed a ring around the central fire pit. He looked proud and a little tired. Shard walked beside, him limping slightly but healing well. The other creatures rested quietly near the trees, some grooming each other, some guarding the borders. Everything felt peaceful, almost too peaceful. Eli whispered to himself, "Peace never lasts, not in a place like this." He spent the early hours checking traps near the river. Most were empty, but one had caught a strange fish with silver scales and glowing fins. He studied it, fascinated, before cooking it over the fire as the smell spread through the camp. The other predators lifted their heads, waiting for a share. Eli laughed softly. All right. Dinner for everyone." He cut the meat and tossed pieces around each creature, caught one neatly. Even Shard, who always waited until the end like a proud guardian. Eli sat down, eating slowly, thinking about the next step: walls bigger, stronger, maybe watchtowers. But before he could start, a low tremor shook the ground. Dust fell from tree branches. The creatures froze. Every head turned toward the eastern ridge. A sound followed a scream high and deep together, echoing through the valley. Eli's heart raced. Shard growled and barked orders. The pack scattered, taking defensive positions. Eli climbed the nearest rock and looked toward the ridge. What he saw made his breath catch. A massive shadow circling in the sky, its wings so wide they blocked half the sun. The scales along its back shimmered like molten glass. The alien instructors in orbit shouted over each other, reading the scanners. Energy. Level Class 10 Lifeform Aerial Apex Predator target moving toward human camp speed, increasing unknown motivation. The commander's voice cut through quiet. Observe no interference. Let us see what the human does. On the ground. The wind howled as the beast descended. Eli grabbed his spear made from sharpened metal and a long branch. He ran to the center of the camp, shouting loud and clear, everyone back behind the walls. Shard stayed beside him. Ready Claws dug into the dirt. The flying creature landed with a crash, trees bending under its weight. Its eyes burned bright yellow and smoke poured from its mouth. Eli looked up at it and whispered, "So you're the boss around here, huh?" The beast roared, shaking the earth, its breath hot like fire. Eli felt his skin sting but didn't step back. He raised his torch high and shouted loud, "You don't want this fight, but if you do, we finish it now." Shard lunged first, biting the creature's leg, claws tearing at its scales. Eli charged, swinging the torch to blind it. The flames reflected in its eyes. It screamed again, knocking Shard aside. Eli didn't think. He jumped onto a rock and threw the torch straight into its open mouth. A burst of light smoke and panic followed. The alien observers stared in disbelief. One said he attacked it directly. Another whispered he's protecting them like a leader, not a survivor. The commander only nodded quietly. Yes, leadership through action. Eli grabbed a long vine, looped it around a sharp branch, and ran toward the beast again, using the trees for cover. He shouted, "Shard now." The wounded predator leapt again, biting the creature's wing, pulling it down. Eli jumped onto its back, driving the vine around its neck, tightening with all his strength. The creature thrashed wings, slamming the ground, dirt flying everywhere. Eli held on until his arms burned. The beast finally stumbled, then with one last roar broke free and flew upward, vanishing into the clouds, leaving blood and feathers behind. Silence fell, only the crackle of broken branches filled the air. Eli dropped to his knees, breathing hard sweat and ash covering his face. Shard limped toward him, bleeding again. Eli reached out, placing a hand on its head, saying, "You did good again, my friend. We both lived, that's enough." The other predators emerged, slowly sniffing the air, confirming the danger had passed. They surrounded Eli, forming a circle, tails low, heads bowed like acknowledging victory. Up in the observation deck 1. Alien spoke, trembling. "He's creating hierarchy. They follow him now like pack structure," the commander said. "Not like they follow him as one of their own." Eli spent the rest of the day cleaning wounds, fixing walls, and feeding the tired beasts. He used herbs from the forest crushed into paste for healing his hands steady. Despite the exhaustion, when the night came, he lit multiple fires, forming a line of light across the camp. The creatures lay beside the flames, their eyes reflecting orange warmth. Shard rested near him, breathing heavy but alive. Eli whispered, "We survived a god today, you and me, friend." He looked at the stars, thinking about how small he was and yet how much he could change. One man, one spark, on one strange world. He said, softly, "They wanted to test if I can live here. Maybe they'll learn if I can make it live with me." He looked at Shard and smiled faintly. "You're not my pet. You're my people now." Far above the planet, the commander made his report. Subject, Eli Carter. Status alive, result unexpected. The alien council members murmured quietly. Some amazed, some afraid. One said, "If this continues, he will not just pass. He will redefine the meaning of survival." The commander nodded, watching the small, glowing camp below. Like a second sunrise forming in the dark forest, Eli leaned back, staring at the moons, their light silver across the leaves. He whispered, "Tomorrow, we build stronger walls. Tomorrow we teach the young ones to stand guard." The forest answered with soft roars like approval, and deep in the sky something new moved. Maybe the storm, maybe the next test, waiting to see what the human would build next in the place once ruled only by predators. The fourth morning began bright and still. The air carried the scent of wet soil and smoke, the kind that follows heavy rain. Eli stood near the stream washing his hands. The cold water numbed his skin, but woke his mind. The camp behind him had grown into something more than shelter. Now it looked like the start of a community. Creatures moved freely, carrying branches, stones, and fruits. Each knew its role. Shard stood like a sentinel, eyes scanning the tree line. Eli smiled softly and said, "We're building something good here, friend." The peace didn't last long. The forest went silent, too fast, too sharp. Eli's instinct screamed before he even saw it. Shard growled low and deep, tail stiff, ears high. Something was wrong. He grabbed his spear and moved toward the east ridge where birds flew in. "Chaotic spirals," he whispered. "Stay alert to his pack." The air thickened. The light dimmed, shadows twisting between trees. Then a roar tore through the valley, so powerful it shook leaves from branches. Eli froze, breath catching in his throat, far above. The planet the Academy ship tracked a sudden energy spike, scanners flashing. The alien commander ordered report. Now the AI responded, Class 10 airborne predator approaching human settlement, distance 1.4 kilometers. The control room fell. "Silent one," alien whispered. "He won't survive." The commander said, "Keep recording, no interference." On the ground, Eli saw it first. A black shape moving against the sun, wings stretched wide, scales like molten metal glowing orange under the light. It looked like a creature born from storm and fire. Its eyes two burning orbs. It screamed again and dived toward the camp. Shard barked once and the predators scattered to the outer wall, forming a defense line. Eli ran to the fire pit, grabbing a burning log and shouting louder than fear itself, "Hold your ground." The beast slammed into the earth, trees splintered. The shockwave knocked Eli off his feet. Shard lunged, claws tearing at its wings. The creature swung its tail, throwing the smaller beasts aside. Eli rolled to his knees, grabbed his spear, and charged toward it. The heat from its body burned his skin, but he didn't stop. He drove the spear into one wing. It howled, shaking the forest, but the spear snapped like dry bone. Eli stumbled backward. Grabbing another burning branch, he shouted, "Get back, stay low." The alien instructors watched in disbelief. One said, "He's not fleeing, he's fighting for the pack." Another replied, "This isn't survival, it's command." The commander just nodded. Eli ran toward Shard, who was locked in battle with the beast, its claws cutting deep across the predator's back. Eli saw blood, bright and steaming. He roared in fury and threw his torch into the creature's face. The flames burst. It screeched and rose, flapping wildly. Shard leapt again, biting down on its leg. Both creatures crashed to the ground. Eli ran forward, grabbed the broken spear shaft, and stabbed with every ounce of strength he had. The metal slid under its scales and hit soft flesh. The creature roared one final time before pulling away, crashing through trees and disappearing into the mountains, leaving behind black smoke and shattered wood. Silence followed, only the sound of fire and heavy breathing. Eli dropped his weapon and fell to his knees, covered in dirt and blood. He turned to Shard, who was bleeding from his shoulder. Eli pressed his hand against the wound, whispering, "You stubborn hero. Hold on, you're not leaving me now." He tore a strip of cloth, wrapped it tight. The creature trembled but stayed still, eyes locked on his face. Eli said quietly, "We lived again." The other beasts slowly returned, heads low, ears back, as if mourning or in awe. They circled Shard and Eli, then bowed their heads together. Eli looked around at the wrecked camp, the walls broken, fires scattered. He sighed. "We'll rebuild stronger this time, up in orbit." The commander recorded the data, saying, "The human displays leadership structure under high pressure. His presence alters pack dynamics. The council will want this immediately." Eli spent the rest of the day patching the shelters, cleaning wounds, feeding the injured predators. He refused to rest until every creature could stand again. When night came, he lit a ring of fire around the camp, each flame tall and bright like a symbol of defiance. He sat beside Shard, his voice calm but full of tired pride. "You saved us again, old friend. I think the others see you as a leader now." Shard made a low rumble, almost a purr. Eli chuckled. "Maybe they see me the same way. Who knows, maybe both of us are just crazy enough to build peace in a war zone." He looked up at the stars, thinking of the ones watching him from above, the examiners, the skeptics, the ones who thought humans were chaos now. They were seeing something new. Cooperation, not dominance, partnership, not control. Eli whispered to the sky. You wanted a test, fine. I'll show you how humans pass tests. We don't just survive, we build families. The night wind swept through the camp, carrying embers into the dark. The predators lifted their heads together and howled, their voices rising in harmony, echoing through the valley like an anthem of the wild. Eli listened, eyes closing, a faint smile on his face. He whispered softly, Tomorrow, we rebuild bigger, stronger, safer, and if another storm comes, we'll face it together. Far above the world, the commander turned away from the screens and muttered almost to himself. The human didn't fight nature. He joined it, and nature followed him. The morning sun rose soft and golden over the new village. Smoke rose gently from the fire pits, and the air carried the mixed scent of wood ash, fruit, and damp soil. Eli stood at the edge of the clearing, looking over what his hands and heart had built in less than a week, shelters lined neatly along a dirt path. Predators lounged near them, resting, calm, eyes half closed. Shard stood beside him, stronger now, scar on its shoulder shining like a badge of honor. Eli said softly, This is more than survival, this is life. The creature huffed like it understood. He took a deep breath, ready to start another day of work. Then the calm broke the air, filled with a strange mechanical hum, faint but steady. It came from the forest west of the stream. Shard raised its head, ears twitching. Eli's instincts sharpened. He whispered, Stay here, and took his spear, moving quietly through the trees. The hum grew louder now, mixed with a weak voice. Help, please help. It sounded broken. Metallic, almost not human, but familiar. When he pushed through the last line of vines, he found a small clearing, a crashed pod half buried in mud, the metal-scorched smoke rising from cracks. Eli's heart jumped. Another cadet. He ran closer and saw movement, a figure. Crawling out, insectoid, thin arms, trembling carapace, cracked dark green blood leaking. The cadets' eyes wide with fear when they saw Eli. They screamed, Stay away, don't hurt me, please. Eli stopped, his voice calm and firm. Hey, easy, I'm not your enemy, I'm human. The insectoid cadets shook their head, gasping, They'll kill you, the predators, they're everywhere, I saw them rip ships apart. Eli looked behind him and said quietly, No, they won't. They protect this place now. The cadet blinked, confused. What the human said, Come on, let me help you. He pulled the cadet up carefully, wrapping cloth around the bleeding arm. The cadet stared at him as if watching something impossible happen. You're helping me after all this. Ellie smiled faintly. That's what we do. We help then. He whistled, a sharp sound from deep in his chest. Within moments, the trees moved and Shard appeared, stepping into the light, followed by two smaller predators. The cadet froze, trembling, eyes wide. Eli said calmly, Don't move, they won't hurt you, they're with me. Shard walked close, sniffed the cadet, and then sat beside Eli. Quiet, protective. Eli looked up. See no danger, they learn fast. High above the planet, the Academy ship's scanners picked up the signal. The commander leaned forward in disbelief. Human has located another cadet, contact established. The AI confirmed visual indicates coexistence between human and Class 8 predators. Commander murmured softly. This shouldn't be possible. Eli helped the cadet walk back to the village. When they entered the clearing, the sight froze the alien's mind. Predators building, carrying wood, digging near the river. Eli smiled, saying, Welcome to our home. It's not fancy, but it works. The cadet whispered home. How, the human said, by listening to the world instead of fighting it. The cadet watched a young predator bring fruits to the center fire, its eyes gentle, its tail wagging softly. Eli handed the cadet a cup of water, saying, Drink, you need strength for the rest of the day. Eli and Shard worked, while the cadet sat silent, watching in awe. Eli taught how to purify water using heat and stone, how to mark trails with smoke, and how to speak calmly around beasts. He said, You don't show fear, you show respect. That's how they know who you are. The cadet listened quietly, repeating his words. Later that night, the sky turned red with sunset colors. Firelight danced across faces. One human. One Alien. Many predators sitting together. In orbit, the commander sent a report to the Council. Human subject Eli Carter has achieved multi-species cooperation. This event is without precedent. Further monitoring required. The room fell silent. None dared to interrupt. Down below, the cadet finally spoke. You could have left me. I was weak. You didn't. Eli answered. We're all weak alone, but not when we stand together. Shard lay near the fire, resting its head beside Eli's knee. The cadet reached out, hesitating, then touched its fur. It didn't move. It only made a low, soft hum. Eli smiled. See, they understand more than we think. As night deepened, the forest around them glowed faintly with bioluminescent plants. The village shimmered like a dream. Eli looked at the stars, whispering, They think this is a test. Maybe it is, but maybe it's something bigger. Maybe the galaxy needs to learn what survival really means. The cadet looked at him, puzzled. What does it mean? Eli answered, not who wins, not who kills, who builds, who shares. That's real survival. The alien cadet fell asleep near the fire safe for the first time since the crash. Eli sat awake, listening to the soft sounds of breathing wind and distant creatures. Shard lifted its head, eyes glowing faint gold. Eli patted it gently, saying, Good work. Today, friend, tomorrow we help the wounded cadet fix their pod. Maybe they can go home, but I doubt they'll want to leave far above the planet. The commander stared at the monitor and whispered, almost in awe. The human didn't just survive the test. He changed it. The council must see this tomorrow. I looked once more at his village, the predators sleeping peacefully, the rescued cadet dreaming near the flames, the stars watching from far away. He smiled and whispered to the quiet night, Maybe the test was never about living alone. Maybe it was about proving we were never meant to be alone at all.